I'm Steve, you're watching Gear Stuff and Things, and today we're going to get into EQing baritone guitars. Stick around. Alright, for the playthrough today, I have two stereo guitar tracks, one bass track in the center, and just a basic drum setup, basic mix there. The idea today is to try to get some ideas on how I would EQ a baritone guitar to sit in a mix and give the bass and the baritones their proper world to live in. So we'll get into it here shortly. The guitar I'm using today is the Squier Paranormal Telecaster, tuned to drop A, so standard baritone tuning. B to B, dropped the lowest note down to A, the bass as well. So let's just jump into it. Let's hear the track as it is, and no EQs have been applied to the guitars or the bass. The drums have some EQing going on, but overall, let's have a listen. Right, so it doesn't sound too bad as it is. You can tell that there's not a lot of separation in the frequencies with the guitar and the bass. They're both fairly low and muddy, but we're going to start chopping away at that. So let's go ahead and pull up an EQ. Just doing a basic EQ here in Logic, nothing too special, nothing that you shouldn't already have in whatever DAW you're using. I always start with the bass cut, so we're going to roll off at 80. I don't do too much crazy stuff when it comes to that. We're going to apply the same thing to both left and right guitar tracks here, just for congruency here. So let's hear what it sounds like now that we've cut some of the low end out of the guitars. So you can already hear that the bass is starting to pop back through. So let's do a little bit of further tweaking here. And like I said, we're going to mimic it across both tracks. You can see there's some peaking happening here. We're going to go ahead and pull that down just a tiny bit. I don't go too crazy with that because I don't want the guitar to lose guitar quality, and I don't want it to turn into too boxy of a tone, if that makes sense. So we'll do the same thing on both here. There's our peak, pulling it down just a little. And I may be in a slightly different place with each of them, it looks like, but you'll get the idea. So let's hear it now. So you can already hear, again, more bass coming through. You can start to hear some of the articulation of that. And let's go ahead and close these out, and we will have a look at the bass and see what's going on with it in the EQ. For the intents and purposes of this, we're going to go ahead and mute out the guitars, just solo the drums and the bass. So what I want to do here is go to 80. And I want to pull some of that 80 up. Like, we took out 80 from the guitars, we're adding in a little bit of extra 80 to the bass. Let's hear it in the mix. Let's add a little more. So we're getting some more definition in the bass, and we've added some definition and clarity to the guitar just in the basic EQing we've done. I haven't done a whole lot here. I've taken 80 out of the guitars. I've boosted 80 on the bass, starting to give things their own life with very little effort. Let's keep going with it. We'll get back into the guitars here, and let's do a little subtractive EQing, and then we'll mimic it on both guitars. So if you're not familiar with subtractive EQing, basically what you want to do is sweep the frequency range and find the thing that doesn't sound good to you, and then we're going to pull it out. So let's do that with the guitars here, and I'm going to solo the guitar just so we get an idea of what we're actually hearing. So let's start doing some sweeping. So that section to me doesn't sound good, so I'm going to pull that out a little bit. So we got 1360. Fair enough. We can narrow that down a little bit too, and really focus in on that area. So 1360 it is, minus 0.7. We'll go ahead and pull down a whole dB. So let's apply the same idea to the other guitar track. So pull up the EQ there, 1360, and we're going to pull it down by 1 dB. Mouse isn't wanting to cooperate, but you'll get the idea. So let's hear it in the mix now that we've carved those things out a bit. Okay, you can already hear how much more present the bass has become just by making these tweaks. So let's do the opposite of subtractive EQ with the bass. Let's find the thing that maybe isn't present in the bass and maybe bring it to the surface just a tiny bit to make its character as far as that section of things stick out a little more. So just think of it in reverse. So if you're taking something out of the other thing, maybe add it in, or if there's already enough of it going on, you don't need to add anything. But in this instance, I'm going to try to bring something extra to the table with the bass because we haven't done any compression or anything like that. It's just straight EQ out of the amp here. All my tones are coming out of the Helix. I have removed global EQs from the Helix, so all of my EQing is basically happening here with the exception of whatever's going on the amp head itself. Typically, if I wasn't doing it this way for presentation, I would do a lot of this post EQ type of stuff inside of Helix, and then I wouldn't have to do any of it in the DAW, and that makes my job a little easier. But if you're someone who's not using Helix and you're recording actual amps or you're using something else to record, this is how I would approach it. So we're going to move back over to the bass, and let's hear the bass and the guitars soloed. So you can definitely hear that we're pulling in some stuff with the bass, kind of giving it some life in the area that we removed from the guitar, as I mentioned previously. Let's hear it in the context of the full mix. And so you get an idea of how much we've really affected things with the bass. I'm going to bring the bass in and out so you hear the differences. So let's start out with that. So here it is as it stands presently. Let's remove the EQ. You can hear that it went back to kind of being buried underneath the baritones. So let's put that EQ back in. So that's it. That's my EQ tip for baritone bass stuff in order to get everything to live in its own frequency area. This is simple stuff. Obviously, you could get much more detailed with it and really spend a ton of time on it. And sometimes it's hard to know when to walk away from something. But in this instance, this is a simple solution to give your guitars proper life, not losing character necessarily, and to bring the bass to the surface without losing its character, to let your bass do the job of the bass and let the baritone guitars do the job of the guitars. Guitars are a mid-range instrument, and that is where they should live. But not my job to tell you how you should do your mixes. So if you're someone who wants your baritones to live in the bass world, and you want to do something different with your bass and make it maybe exist a little more in the guitar realm of the EQ, that's yours to do how you wish. Until next time, it's been me, it's been you. This is Gear Stuff and Things. Hopefully you found this little video helpful. Thank you so much for your suggestions recently. Also, thank you so much to the people who have checked out my band Close the Hatch on Bandcamp. So until next time, it's been me. It's been you. I already said that.